Hello, everyone. Hello, Renee.
Hello from Northeast region. How are you
Hello from
today?
Northwest region. I'm good. Well, I'm okay. I'm just coming off a little bit of an illness, so um, still on the mend and recovering, but back at work and trying to make an impact. So here we are.
Well, welcome back. Thank you for joining us virtually today. You sound great.
I don't know. I don't know about great, but I sound close to
How's
myself,
the
I would
weather
say.
out in
Thank you.
Northwest? You're in Thunder Bay right now?
Thunder Bay. It's actually, you know what? It's been really great. It's a little cooler today. It's overcast and there was some rain today, but no snow on the ground. We in Thunder Bay we haven't had any for like anything significant for a while. I know some of the outlying areas have had
Yeah.
a little bit of snow, so there might be some there, but for the most part, I think we haven't, we haven't been hit yet, but it's probably coming very
Yes.
soon, I would think.
We know it is.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
Yes.
It's inevitable.
Hello to all of our
Hello to
viewers.
every
Yeah.
hello to yeah, hello to everybody who's joining us today. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us. Um, Scott McNabb, he's in Thunder Bay. I know that guy. Hi, Scott. So lots of familiar Kate Boucher. I've seen Kate before. Lisa's on. So lots of people joining us. Lots of comments. Lots of hellos. So hello to everybody who's out there. Um, what what do you think we should talk about today?
I feel like we should be, well, we're always interactive, but let's also ask our guests some questions and get them involved in maybe our 10 areas of assessment. Like, let's talk about um, the 10 areas of assessment. So you see it on the screen here. Um, Everyone and all of our viewers, this is the 10 areas that we assess throughout the OPP recruitment process. This exact pie chart is exactly what we're looking at for competitive level, and you can find it on our social media websites or platforms. You can find it on www.opp.ca, but also if you are following us on Instagram, Facebook, and anywhere, this pie chart will pop up periodically, and this is what we're speaking to when we're talking about the areas of assessment and what we're looking for in our candidates going through, various processes with the OPP. So I was thinking, let's talk about these areas and hear what our guests have to say about each piece, and let's brainstorm and work together on ways to be competitive and what competitive looks like. We'll answer your questions, but also throw out your ideas to help each other with regards to coming in as a competitive candidate. And here's the thing, not one file's the same. Not one of you are the same. We don't expect you all to be the same with your applications. We want you to be different and we want you to bring your best you. So let's talk about so many ways to be competitive. Um, Starting with our first one, I guess, let's look at education. How about that?
So with education, I think that there was a misconception that the OPP required something beyond grade 12 education. That's not the case. It hasn't been the case. Grade 12 is our minimum requirement. But with that being said, minimum doesn't mean most competitive, right?
Right.
So we have our minimum standard that people need to meet to get into the conversation, I guess. And then there's things that you can do beyond that that make you more competitive or that would make you more competitive or stand out, right? So, what do we look for there with your high school education or whatever the equivalency is for that? We prefer to see, like um, where you went to school, when you were there, so what school you were at, what kind of grades did you get, what kind of course load did you have, and what were maybe some different courses that you might have taken in that space. Were you involved in any extracurricular stuff? Did you do any like athletics at your school or anything like that? Did you have to work? while you were in high school, or did you choose to work when you were in high school, right? These tell us a lot about you as a person, um, because it helps us see that like this person can prioritize, they can multitask, they can time manage, right? Because they can manage their studies as well as other things on top of that. So whatever you're doing when you're talking about your secondary education, your secondary school education, do the same thing with any post-secondary you have, whether it's university, whether it's college, whether it's a trade, anything like that, right? So again, what institution, what time frame are we talking about? What kind of marks are you getting, and what extra stuff are you doing on top of that? I think those are the kind of the key elements. And then there's a lot of areas outside of like formal education that we look at that kind of ties into education too. So what are there any courses that you've taken through your employer? Are there any extra outside like courses that you've taken just on your own, like the University of Alberta Indigenous Canada course or program, right? Like there's things that you can do on your own that can add to your competitiveness in the education area. The Canadian Police Knowledge Network has a lot of free online courses that you can take that are police oriented or kind of like lean toward the policing career. So those are things that you can take. We have our Be the Bridge Challenge and our Inclusion Insights Challenge that people can take as well. So these things all speak to your ability to learn, and they speak to your motivation to continually improve and build on yourself.
Fantastic. Are we hiring, Sergeant Mills?
We may be. There's a lot of hiring going on in policing in general, but within the OPP, we're actually hiring 4 cohorts in the coming year for OPC. So everything's kind of shifted and changed with the timings with OPC, and there's some online learning that's going to be happening as well as in-person learning with the kind of the way they've kind of changed kind of their approach to the basic constable program. So yeah, we're trying to hire um, a bunch of people for 4 cohorts now instead of just 3. So yes, we are hiring, and we're hiring quite a few people.
I'll go through some questions and I'll just ask you them, Dan. There's some good ones here about I don't have a background in law, or I don't have a background in policing or security and things like that. Should I still be applying, or what would I do to best prepare?
Um, it does. I don't think that that's crucial or critical. The thing that having like let's say somebody has a job in the security field, right? And they're applying to policing. It just gives them a little bit of knowledge of kind of the space that they're going to be transitioning into. If you're an accountant coming into policing, it's not a deal breaker by any means. That like everybody has different knowledge and everybody has different experiences that can be transferable to the career of policing. It's just sometimes there are careers and there are educational programs that you can take that are more specifically geared toward, which makes the transition maybe sometimes a little bit easier for some people, but it's not necessary and it's not necessarily required, if that kind of answers that question.
That's for sure. We have here, how do I get it? Like they're asking about specialties coming into policing and when they can consider those kinds of options like forensics, et cetera, et cetera.
I would recommend embracing those opportunities when you can. But I would also say like pump the brakes early and just learn how to be a police officer first. Get a good solid base there before you start working on trying to specialize. Um, Again, it can be a long career when you're so specialized for such a long period of time. It actually can be a long career, and you can miss out on a lot of really good opportunities that you might not have ever really known about. So I would say give it some time. I would recommend, and this is just me, but I would recommend 3 to 5 years of being a frontline officer to really learn the job before you start kind of thinking about getting into any type of specialty space. And some specialties have that, built right into kind of the postings for those jobs, or those opportunities. They want sometimes 3 to 5 years of frontline experience, and it's for a reason. It's a good reason.
Good.
I'm going to rely on you just to do all the reading, if you don't
No,
mind,
that's
Renee.
okay. I will for sure. No
Yeah,
problem.
my head's kind of not in that space right
They're
now.
asking about what free courses you mentioned. What kind of free courses do you mean?
Oh, the Canadian Police Knowledge Network. If you just go on their website, just type that in under Google or whatever search you're in. You should come to their website, and they have police specific ones that you actually have to be a police officer to be able to take. But there are some that are available to the general population.
I think that some of them do have costs though.
Some of them do cost. There are some free ones as well.
We always get a varied amount of applications that come in to the OPP. So they're asking like, how many do we get? Every year is different. And again, we're hiring for so many different streams. So if you go to www.opp.ca and you go to careers, it's going to talk about civilian roles. It's also going to speak to uniform roles. It will speak to volunteer positions, cadet roles. A lot of the information for all of the various positions are in there, and we'll bring you to additional sites to see additional civilian roles, et cetera. So I see some questions here about civilians. Listen, we have up around 10,000 employees province wide. Approximately 6,000 are frontline uniform members, the rest are civilian. So the opportunities in civilian roles, volunteer roles are endless, and you can use them to develop. But many of our civilian positions are full-time, long-term careers, and there's so many kinds of careers within the OPP. In civilian positions as well. So please go and take a look and see what we do have available there.
Tyler's asking about auxiliaries, the auxiliary program being a good stepping stone. I began my actual policing journey as an auxiliary member with the
Same
OPP,
here.
and I know that Renee did as well. When you look at the 10 areas of assessment that are on your screen right now, just participating in the auxiliary program can really help you develop in a lot of these areas. It can give you a ton of community service opportunities. It can give you a ton of police specific education. It can give you leadership opportunities. You may actually get an opportunity to drive certain OPP vehicles, like if you're going to help participate in a parade and stuff like that, right? It can help you enhance your communication skills. It could give you some certain special skills, and it will help you speak to motivation and, the things that you've done to try to position yourself to succeed in your application and getting into this career. So there's a lot of areas that it can really help you develop and grow that can help make your application more competitive.
We're being asked, when is a good time to apply? Well, really, it's when you're at your competitive best. The amounts that we're hiring, we're always hiring. And if we have 4 classes processing a year, you put your application in when you're ready to police and when you're at that competitive level in all of these areas of assessment. So when you are ready, submit your application and we will start processing. And those process pieces happen pretty quick. So to say exactly when you would be hired, if successful, for what class, we can't be specific to that. It's just going to be submit when you're ready and we're going to start processing. Okay.
Cheyenne's asking about OACP vision and hearing test earlier this year. Document states valid for 2 years. Yeah, just make sure you submit those results with your application, or add them to your application, and yeah, those will be valid.
How would you like the shuttle run submitted when there's snow on the ground?
Very carefully, don't slip.
Don't slip. Try and find somewhere that's maybe been plowed or the snow is removed. You can also get the little grips for under your shoes for safety too. We don't want anyone getting injuries, but figure out different ways to do it safely.
Harinderjeet is asking about permanent residency card. Wait till you have it, physically have it, because we'll need a copy of that when you attached to your application. Somebody here is turning 18 in September. When is the earliest they can apply? Whatever the day after your birthday is, you can apply if you want. I love the enthusiasm, though,
Yes.
eh?
And consider the other
So I'll
programs,
let,
right? Like consider auxiliary, consider cadet
yeah,
programs, consider those development programs for when you're 18 as well.
Jordan is asking about French language to work at detachments near Quebec. And maybe you can comment as well, Renee. I don't know that there's like a firm requirement for those detachments, but they definitely do look for French language as a strong asset to work in those areas. I think it's one of those things that if it can be sometimes difficult if you're not bilingual in those areas.
Yeah, we absolutely do have detachments that are more dominant speaking French. English is the primary language to apply for the OPP. You do need to speak English, but if you have any other language, please make sure we know, because we have various languages and cultures and backgrounds throughout the entire province. So these are all additional skills you have. If you speak other languages proficiently, make sure that we're aware, please.
I see people just keep trying to get their questions closer to the top because there's questions that I've seen that are coming back up. Cadet program isn't hiring. When do you believe it would begin hiring again? So again, the cadet applications are closed right now. We'll open them back up in the spring. I think they're planning another spring class with the cadets. So we'll get into that process in the spring. You'll see something if you follow us on social media. There will be an announcement on social media when we're going to be accepting cadet applications again.
Some information about volunteer firefighting and driving, all fantastic skills. Absolutely note those things.
Excuse me. I've seen a couple questions about police foundations as a program. So, I mean, a lot of colleges don't like it when we say this, but police foundations it is beneficial for you to take for sure 100%. But it's not a required education for applying with the OPP. And so what I mean is we take a lot of people with a lot of different skills and educational backgrounds, whether they're trades, whether it's university, whether it's college, right? The minimum requirement is grade 12, and then anything above and beyond that can make you more competitive. Now, Police Foundations is unique in that it's police-oriented education, right? So a lot of the things and where that could benefit you is if you do get hired and you are successful, when you go to OPC, a lot of the information that you're going to be seeing at OPC and the knowledge that they're giving you is stuff that you'll be familiar with from that program that they've already laid the foundation with you. Okay, so that's where Police Foundations can definitely be an asset for sure.
When you're talking about references for your application, learning and development can be anyone who can speak to you being teachable and trainable. Okay. A lot of times you might have been out of education programs for 5 years, 10 years, who knows? Some are just graduating. Everyone's different. If you've been away from school, what have you done for ongoing learning, and who can speak to your ability to be teachable and trainable. Let's talk a little bit about lifestyle and life experience.
Oh, we've only got 9 to go.
Let's throw up another topic, and we'll still keep
Yeah.
answering you, of course. Thanks for
Yeah.
everyone participating here. This is fantastic.
So what does lifestyle and life experience mean to you, Renee?
My gosh. It just really covers so many things, right? It covers from the lifestyle and life experience you bring from your community service, your employment, and all of those things, but also, how you present your social media activity, your social life, all of the things combined. Really, it's just uh, a totality of lifestyle life. I think it's one of our biggest pieces of the pie that we look at.
It is,
Cultural
and
cultural learning.
it's so broad and it's so broad and
Yes.
general, right? Like it's kind of like the catch-all, like your finances are and financial responsibilities are in there, your alcohol use, your cannabis use, like there's just so many different things that kind of come in to make this a piece of the puzzle or a piece of the
Living a
pie.
lifestyle conducive of policing.
So there's a lot that goes into lifestyle and life experience. And again, the one thing that I would say, and it's funny because um, I coach high school volleyball and more with the younger grades, the 9s and 10s, because I'm more into I like player development, athlete development. Um, but one of the things that I'm always talking to my student athletes about is careful what you're putting on social media. Just pay attention to what you're putting on. Be aware what seems cool now in 5 years when you're applying for the job that you want for life, it might limit you if you're not using your head and if you're not making good decisions about the stuff that you're putting on social media or the comments that you're putting on social media, different things like that, right? They really can be impactful down the road because the internet doesn't disappear, right? Like when it's out, it's out. So just be mindful of what you're doing with your social media.
Does programs like True or ERT, those kinds of programs, take in new members every year?
Not, it's usually on it's usually kind of like on a vacancy basis. So, depending on the movement in the team, usually the way it's set up is there's X number of positions on a team. And if nobody's left the team or, if there's nothing going on like that, no transferring or promotions or different things like that, then there's going to be no vacancies to fill. So you might not have to take anybody in that year. And then there's other years where it's like they have a huge selection process where, everybody who goes through that selection process successfully gets placed on a team because there's a need, because there's been a lot of internal movement in the organization. So it really is dependent, but there's no general rule saying every year we take X number of different number of people onto the teams.
Cadet intakes.
Somebody,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say that I saw somebody earlier asked about should they submit, they're in post-secondary, and should they submit their application during their last semester? And I would say that would be the smart thing to do, for sure. If you're competitive, if you feel you're at your competitive best, then I would say yes, that's probably the smart thing to do, because I mean our process takes 3 to 6 months anyway, so you might as well get through a lot of that process while you're in school. So hopefully maybe you're in line or lined up for one of our summer or fall intakes a little bit better, right? So timing could be a thing there. Sorry, Renee, you were saying
Okay, we just
something
get a
there
lot of
before I
questions
rudely
about the
interrupted you.
cadet program. And we're currently processing one class right now. A pilot came out back in 2022, and we've gone forward with another class coming up shortly of 30 cadets. So in looking forward, we're hoping to have another one in the spring. I really don't have a date confirmed or anything like that yet, but stay tuned. The cadet applications, however, are only open for a period of time. So if you're following on social media or going to our website regularly, you'll see the updates there about the cadet program and when you are able to apply, what the minimum requirements are, and so much more. It's a 1-year contract to develop into becoming your competitive best for a frontline application to be submitted. They're also available to have part-time and full-time positions, which is really good to know because we'd love to be able to support you as well if you are in post-secondary.
I think that's a great option for a lot of people, to be able to continue with their education, work for the OPP on weekends and during their summer time off school. I think it's just that piece of the program, I think, is like, yeah, it's a bit of a game changer, I think. But Anderson's asking about firearms. How many firearms are we being evaluated on during training? You'll be trained at any time during your training. You're gonna learn how to handle our pistol, which is a Glock. You'll learn how to handle a C8 CQB, which is a 223 caliber rifle, and you'll also be exposed to Model 870 Remington shotgun as well.
And you do have to meet the vision requirements when applying. You'll be asked to get that completed. And also, transcripts are required. Okay, so we do need your high school transcripts. If you have post-secondary, we would like to have those as well to review your grades. Remember, if you're attending the Ontario Police College, you do require a 75% in order to be successful there. Okay, so having grades of 75% or higher is fantastic. Is it always the case? Maybe, maybe not. If you haven't gone to school in a while, show us how you will reach those marks. But again, just having a diploma with low grades doesn't satisfy us that you're going to get 75 at the Ontario Police College. So please keep that in mind. You need to be able to show us that you're going to be successful should you be offered employment.
Mauricio is asking about reference letters in other languages, such as Spanish, if they have to be translated. I think it would be helpful. And if you want to, my suggestion would be, Mauricio, if you want to submit the original document, the original reference, but then create a translated Word document through, I don't know, through whatever Chat GPT or Google Translate or whatever it is, and attach them together as a file, just so that we don't have to do the translating for it. I think that would probably be appreciated. Tyler's asking about high school transcripts or just a diploma as proof of education. We'd like to see both if possible, because we not only want to see that you graduate, but we'd also like to have some idea of what, like what your marks are and how, you are as a student.
What kind of things should be in a reference letter? Well, get reference letters from people that really know you well, that can really speak to whatever you're asking them to submit it for, whether it be employment, whether it be character, whether it be educational references, and speak to what they truly know about you. Just saying someone's a great person. Okay, but how are you? So what are their experiences with you? What can they speak to about how you're a great person? What kind of things are they familiar with or have they been involved with you? So make sure your references are speaking to actual experiences and what they really know of you. Okay.
Jordan's talking about just asking what they can expect in their first week. Congratulations, Jordan, orientation on the 4th. I actually full transparency, I have no idea what you're going to experience in that first week. But just be open and it's going to be a nervous time, but everybody that's there is going to be nervous. I think at that time you'll probably see, you'll probably be exposed to, a bunch of, this is what you need to do, this is what you shouldn't do or can't do. You'll probably do a bunch of paperwork. You'll probably be exposed to maybe some policies and procedures that you need to pay attention to. You may end up doing first aid CPR again. Like there are different things in the first week that they cover. Probably some fitness as well, I would think, in the first week. So there's a bunch of things that they'll cover in the first week. And you'll probably be nervous, and that's okay. Just remember, everybody else that's there is nervous too. Okay. And you'll be fine.
They're asking about point systems and applying if you're a different diversity and whatnot. Listen, everybody gets an equal opportunity, and we just want everyone that's at their competitive best to apply. Definitely look at the options, though. If you are developing, not only is there developmental programs, you can look at REACH programs, and that's another mentoring program that we open up usually 2 to 3 times a year to become more competitive. But when you're applying to the OPP, we just have a competitive level that we'd like to see all of our candidates reaching when they're applying. Remember, we'd like to see every diversity and every culture applying to be able to represent the province that we're serving as well. But you do have to come in at a competitive level. Okay, want to look at another piece of the pie here? Let's
Yeah, sure.
talk about community service.
I was like, oh, don't say community
That's
service.
next. Or another.
Community service. That's a big topic, actually. And anybody who's been on these that I've done in the past know kind of how I feel about community service. One of the questions I ask people often is, why do you want to be a police officer? And those people usually almost always come back to me and say, because I want to have a positive impact in my community. So my response to that is, what are you doing right now? Right? So when people say, well, how much do I really need? Well, I don't know how much you really need, but I do know that I need to see that there's a history of it, that you have some engagement with your community, and you have some interest in trying to make your community better. So that's what we're looking for with that. And that can look like a whole pile of different things. That can look like me being involved in coaching at a local high school or a school. That could be coaching your kids' hockey team. That could be helping out with the Salvation Army kettle drive. That could be doing a Stuff a Cruiser, Stuff an Ambulance thing. That could be Boys and Girls Club, or Big Brothers and Big Sisters, right? Like there's a ton of different things out there you can do. And if you're sitting there thinking like, well, I don't know what we have in my community, well, Google it. Like I could do a quick Google search of community service Thunder Bay, and it would give me excuse me, it would give me a whole list of different organizations and groups that do community service in Thunder Bay. And then it's just a matter of like reaching out to them and saying, hey, do you guys need help? Do you guys need help? Do you guys need help? And then sometimes, like Renee, I know that you're a big sister, and there's sometimes a bigger process that's involved because they do screening and vetting and different things like that, right? But there's also things that are a little bit easier to get into too. And there's short-term volunteer work, and then there's long-term volunteer work. And I guess it's really up to you and how you want to engage with your community and how important that is to you. So I really can't answer the how much should I do. But I do also say that there are people with different circumstances in life. And I did an interview with a fellow one time, and I asked him why he didn't have much community service on his resume. And he said, well, my brother has cancer, and I'm his primary caregiver. I'm responsible for getting him to his appointments and this and that and the other thing. And it's like, I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense to me why you don't have a ton of it. And that to me means as much or more because it's a selfless act that this person is doing, right? Another person I interviewed didn't have a ton of community service right now. They had some in the past, but like the right now wasn't super strong. And I asked about it, and they were like, well, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I honestly, between working my hour commute on either end, and my partner working as well, and the small kids, we just don't, there's no time. And I'm like, hey, I get that. And he says, but I do have a contribution, a payroll deduction that comes off my paycheck that goes to the United Way, right? So this person couldn't give their time, but the community is important to them, so they made sure that they were contributing in a different way. Okay, so those are all things to think about with community service.
Absolutely. So I would say, just in general, once you apply, I see a question here about how long it takes to process. I mean, we've seen 2 months to 6 months, maybe a little more. Just depends on the file, but it's pretty fast. So the minute you submit your application, expect things to start moving. Okay. And again, let's take a see. There's a couple of the same questions here.
After the application is reviewed, how long does it take to be invited for an interview? Again, we try not to put times on things. Yeah, there's a lot of different factors that are kind of in play, that can affect the timing of things. So
Okay, so yeah, make sure that you're applying, and we know where you're at with your education. If you have a couple of months left before you're done school, it usually takes that long anyhow to process. So look at the timing that way. Give yourself 2 to 6 months. We're gonna need to have that time to process your file. And again, talking about little bit of time for community service, even if you can find a couple hours a week here and there, find things that you love doing. 15 hours with auxiliary is fantastic. That's meeting the minimum requirement for sure.
Mohammed's asking about, did you happen to answer Mohammed's question, Renee?
Which one
Sorry.
was it? Oh,
Just about just clarifying the third year of a 4-year program. Talk to a recruiter, encouraged to apply. They would like to next summer. So I'm just going to echo what Renee, I think, just said. Like the process is usually 3 to 6 months. So if your goal is to, if you're successful to be hired in the fall, so in September, I would say, it's safe. It's pretty safe to, submit your application in March, right? Like we should be able to get through it by then. If your goal is to get hired, when you're done school at the end of the semester, at the end of April, maybe, then, like you want to back that up to maybe this time of year, right? So again, just kind of always kind of think, I would think 6 months kind of in advance.
there's questions here about secondary employment if you're a police officer. Can you have it?
You
What are the
are,
rules? You have to
yeah.
apply for secondary employment or advise the OPP if you have secondary employment. And it just goes through a process there for approvals. I don't have all those specifics in front of me, but can you have secondary employment? Yes, you can. The specifics to it would have to go through a process.
Yeah, you have to submit some paperwork basically saying that this is what the secondary employment is, what it all involves. And they really want to make sure that there's no conflict of interest there that's going to be generated by this by this secondary employment. So let's say I had a trap line in the Thunder Bay area, for example, and that was considered secondary employment. I would have to fill out the form, then it would go into my supervisor, and it would go up the chain, and they would look at it, and they would assess whether there's a conflict of interest, and then they would authorize it, right? Because how is having a trap line going to be a conflict of interest, right?
They're asking, are interviews being done in person or online?
Online. All of our interviews are still being conducted virtually. It's really quite efficient for us. It's one of the efficiencies we gained through COVID. We do lose a little bit in kind of person-to-person interaction, but it's generally speaking, it's a little bit more efficient, so we've stayed with that.
And it's very easy. I mean, thinking about candidates that are, all over the province, outside of the province. Even I've interviewed candidates that have been away on vacation because it's just worked out. The convenience of being able to do it online is extremely efficient. We had a question from an EPO in here too, and I just missed it as it went down the screen, but I believe it was, is their training transferable into the OPP? Does their experience, is it valued from their services, etc.? You were
Oh
an
gosh,
EPO,
yeah.
Sergeant Mills?
Yeah. Well, and all the EPOs that we interview too, like that's part of the education piece of the areas of assessment, right? And like, not only do our EPOs have a bunch of Canadian Police Knowledge Network courses, they've got probably a bunch of OPC courses that they've gone on, internal courses, right? And these things all help us, because like, we look at an applicant, and if they've got a ton of different like traffic courses or tactical based courses or different things like or crime based courses, right? It can really help us, in the future, thinking like, okay, well, this person's got a lot of pretty good background in crime. So maybe after, 10 months or a year of service as an EPO on the front line, then maybe they can help out and use some of that knowledge, in an area that's lacking in their detachment, right? So yeah, it's definitely a pretty big asset. Lisa's asking, how often are you transferred after you are hired? Really, we just ask you to go to your first detachment, wherever that might be, based on your 6 selections, and then we try to put you in one of those if we can, or very close if we can't, and we try to do a good job of that. But after that, you could stay at that detachment for your entire career if you want. It's really, your career is up to you after that. I know people who have stayed at the same detachment for their entire career, and I also know people that have been to 5 or 6 different detachments, just because they value the experience of going different places and working with different people to learn new things. So it's really up to you, and it's based on, probably largely on, your personal situation.
Mm-hmm. Working for a province is a sweet gift, really. The amounts of opportunities, and knowing that you can work your career for 30 years in one location, but you have an entire province to pick from, and we have opportunities on a daily basis being posted within the organization. So keep that in mind as well. It's pretty exciting.
Derek's got a question. Derek Mills, I must say, no relation.
Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe.
We've never met, so I'm expecting that it's probably a no. But when you're considering an applicant, what core competencies should an applicant have when considering applying to become provincial constable? I would take a look at our values, the OPP's, take a look at the mission, the vision, and the values, because those really do kind of encompass any competency that you should have as a police officer. And your values should probably be somewhat in alignment with the organizational values. So, it's it's hard to answer this question without giving away giving away too much that you may see maybe in an interview. So I don't want to give that away necessarily. But again, if you stick to the values and kind of like get to know those, I think those are probably a good starting point for you. I think you could probably Google base police competencies or basic core police competencies, and you'll probably get a list of different things that would apply to that as well. That would be pretty accurate, I would think.
Just looking at Anderson. Anything about pension, speak to your HR and also call the Ontario Pension Board to get those answers, okay? Definitely couldn't say specifics to what you're entitled to or not, but there definitely may be options and opportunities there with pensions and transferable pensions and whatnot, depending what you're coming from. So go and ask your HR and also call the Ontario Pension Board as well.
Oh, Kenroy's got a, no, not Kenroy.
Lots of duration posting
Yes.
questions coming up.
Kenroy's, so here's a question from Kenroy about where and how do I submit my application? We talked about this like right before we came live here. So the OPP, as of October 11th, the OPP has a new application portal. Okay, so it's actually pretty cool because there's one side for our applicants, and then we can get at it from the back side. So we can see what you're putting on there. We can't change anything or manipulate it in any way. But that's how, so instead of like sending an application to us now, all you're going to have to do is go on our website, opp.ca/careers. You'll see a link there for our application. Click on the link. It'll direct you to a portal where you'll have to create an account. Okay, so it's a unique account. Only you have the password to it, right? And then you can log on, you can go in, and you can start filling out the application. And again, it's as easy as just following the directions and filling it out how we ask you to fill it out. When you need to include documentation like transcripts and stuff like that, you can easily just upload it onto your file. It's super slick. And then we actually have, once you hit submit, then we actually have access to the back side of that, and we can actually then see your application, and then we can do our stuff on the back end of that. If there's anything we need from you, we can send you messaging directly on that portal. So it's actually, it should be working out pretty slick, I would think. I'm pretty excited about it. There's still probably some growing pains with it. And it actually tells you like you are 86% complete, right? So if you're missing information, you know that you're missing information somewhere, and you need to get something and add it there, and then it'll tell you you're 96% complete and you're only missing a few things, right? So it's a pretty good system. So that's how you apply for the OPP now, through that online portal.
And be as transparent as you can. And if you don't have all the dates like you're asking here, I see the question about not knowing the exact start dates of certain employments. To the best of your ability, and respond in your best good faith possible. If there's something that you don't have an answer to, then you can put unknown. Just make sure that we know you've tried to answer it, but do the best you can with retrieving those dates. And yes, it is all employment.
Good enough, eh? I love good enough people who are like, I look at it like there's 1,000 applicants and we're hiring 400 people this year. Like what's good enough, and what makes you one of those 400 applicants and not one of the 600 that gets left behind, right? So again, some people just you know what, that's good enough. Is it good enough? Is it going to be what gets you into that 400? Give as much detail as you can. Answer that. We ask questions for a reason. It's because we want the answers. So do a little digging to try to find those answers. And the other thing I say to that is, you're applying to be a job as a police officer. And one of those things that we do as police officers is investigations. Show us that you can do a little digging and a little investigating, right? Looks good.
Pay attention to detail. Equality in the OPP is to be giving your best you at all times. If you're running your shuttle run and you're submitting it and you need a minimum of level 7, but you can do more, do more. Make sure that your application's coming in grammar and error free, right? Grammar's quality, your interaction with the OPP, your emails are professional. All of those things really, really do matter and reflect on you. So always give your best version of you.
So 2 quick questions here. I'm just going to say Misty because it's in quotes in the middle. I was going to try the name, but I'm not gonna. I don't want to butcher it. Can we go back in and save and keep adding on the online portal, or do we have to fill it out all at once? No, that's one of the beauties of the new system is you can just create your account and you can work on your application at your own pace, add things when you get it and when you need to. That's one of the strengths of the new system. Now Fitzroy has a question very similar. I've already got the old application filled out. Do I need to refill each area? Do I just upload? Unfortunately, you just take that information. I know it's going to take some time and it's not ideal for you, and I appreciate the effort that it will take you. But take the information from the old application and put it in the new system. Unfortunately, that's kind of what you'll have to do.
All right. So when you're coming through the process, they're asking about interview tips and psychological tips and those kinds of things. The best advice truly is just be your honest self. Come in and be you, and come in and answer the questions truthfully and honestly. That is my best advice. There's no real preparation for psych testing. Just come in and be yourself that day and answer truthfully. And same with
I think there's
you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think there's Sigma practice
There
tests that
is.
you can do online. So, I mean, if you want to do some of those to prepare, maybe, but like this overthinking the psych testing is probably what gets more people into trouble with the psych testing than just answering the questions as they come, right? And like Renee says, just be your authentic self in the interview. I approach my interviews as a conversation, and I want to get the best out of the people that I'm interviewing. So that's kind of how I frame it. And if you can just, and again, it's about you, so you're the expert on you. So just share what you know about you with us, and we'll try to get the information out of you. But don't be shy, and really try to sell yourself and brag a little bit about yourself in a good way.
Finances. So again, finances are part of the lifestyle life experience portion of the areas of assessment. I guess the best advice I can give is we expect you to have reasonable debt. Everybody's human. We all have expenses. We all need to survive. We have vehicles, houses, rent, whatever, school loans, those kinds of things are all normal. Are you able to keep up? Are you able to prioritize and pay your bills, have food on the table, and take care of your necessities? Okay, that's really, really important. Have you had some financial difficulty in the past? Perhaps, but where are you at now? And are you taking care of those things?
Neil's asking about applying to different organizations at the same time. No issues with that. I believe it's a competitive market out there, and I expect to see, especially like I think about myself when I was, interested in becoming a police officer and thinking like my goal, like I believe that the OPP is the premier organization, but I I'm interested in being a police officer. Like that's what I want to do. That's what I believe in my soul I'm meant to do. Right. So I get it if people apply to different organizations. I think that's normal.
And it does not hinder you.
No, it doesn't at all.
No,
Um,
absolutely support that. We understand. your passion
So
for policing.
yeah. Now this is a question about the North, Renee. Mitch is asking. He knows there's a bonus, so our duration incentives,
Mhm.
right, for going up north after 2-year term, um, and I would like to do another 2-year term, but in a different area. Do you still
Yes.
get duration incentive? Yes, you do. Okay, so you could go to Armstrong Detachment for 2 years. Since we're talking 2 years, there's different lengths. There's 2 years all the way to 6 years, and there's different financial incentives for each of those timings. So since you're asking about 2-year durations, Mitch, we'll talk about 2-year durations. But let's say Armstrong, for example. I go to Armstrong for a 2-year duration, and I get the $30,000 duration incentive over those 2 years, 15 a year, right? I can choose to go to Pick a Lake after I'm done in Armstrong and sign on for another 2-year duration in Pick a Lake and get that $30,000 duration incentive as well. And even if I stayed in Armstrong, I would still continue to get the benefit of those duration incentives as long as I stayed in Armstrong.
And between Northeast region and Northwest region, we have more than 50 detachments, and more than 40 of those are duration postings. So it's pretty impressive when you get those detachment lists, or if you go on opp.ca and look at our detachment locations, anything with a number beside it is a duration posting, and that's when those incentives kick in. Okay, and not only the financial incentive, but also the ability to relocate after you're done duration gets a priority as well for those lateral transfers. We also have a lot of support in place for your relocation. Okay, so if you're in a duration posting and you have a home to sell and you want to move to another location and you apply for transfer, there's also supports in place with regards to purchasing your home off for you, and the assist with your move as well, to make everything smooth and effortless. And I can honestly say I've lived in duration postings for more than 20 years of my career, and I've moved even as recently as last year, really flawlessly. So um, definitely don't let duration postings hinder you. There's so many wonderful things about them, and I was in them for 20 years for a reason. They're exceptional. The training's exceptional. The opportunities are exceptional. Living in the North is an amazing experience. Embrace that opportunity if you have the chance.
Look at us talking about the North, Renee.
I know it's really
Like
important to
like we
get
know.
those duration questions out. So while we're on here, a couple more minutes. If you have a duration question, please ask it.
It's Renee had mentioned opportunities in the north, and that's something that I usually highlight when I talk about my region. Like there's just such an attrition rate, like we're geographically we're so big in the north, but from a population perspective, we have the least amount of people in our areas. So again, we have these commitments to provide policing, and we have these detachment staffing levels, but we have a much lower population to draw from to hire people to staff. So we rely on places like Southern Ontario to convince people to say, you know what, take a chance, have an adventure, come to the north and work in the north, right? But inevitably, like people come to the north, work in the north, and then it's like this full circle where it's like they spend some time up north and then they decide that they got to get back to their aging parents, or there's something that draws them back, right? So there's always this attrition in the north where we have different positions and opportunities. And for every officer that comes to the north and works in the north for a period of time and then goes back to the south, that officer takes with them a ton of training and experience. And when we hire new officers for those locations, we need to train those officers to that level, right? So there's a lot of really cool opportunities for a lot of interesting training and development professionally, and promotion as well, in our northern regions because of that. So it is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool place to be.
There's a lot of definite little gem areas in the north to be working. We can probably talk about them endlessly.
Well, I think the next AMA that we do will be just all about the north.
All about locations.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Next
Yeah.
AMA in the north will be all about our locations, duration postings, and
Talk
whatever
about
questions. Bring your questions.
yeah, talk about all the little things that kind of come with durations, and the timings involved with them, the financial incentives that we have for them, different opportunities. I think there's a
Mhm.
$2,000 for a recruit that gets offered a position in a duration. They
Mhm.
actually, when they start, they actually get a $2,000. It's not a bonus, but they get a one-time payment of $2,000 just to help them with their relocation, and that's for recruits that are going to duration locations only.
That's right.
So
Wonderful.
yeah, I think this is the part I hate the most.
I know.
It's
You
because
see
there's
the
so many
questions coming in.
questions. There's so many
Mhm.
questions that we haven't answered. So um, again, I apologize to those who didn't get their questions answered. Keep logging on to these and keep asking them. Um, Sign up for any information sessions in our upcoming events, and try to get them answered that way as well, I would suggest. Thank you to everyone for hopping on here with us today. I know your time is very valuable. I know ours is as well. So we really appreciate you hopping on and asking your questions and to talk with us and, learn what you can. It is a big deal. So, Renee, as usual, it's
Yeah.
been great.
Thank you, everyone. I'm watching the snow come down. You jinxed me earlier.
Oh, no way.
It's coming now, just now.
Yeah.
So anyone in the North Bay area, we are getting snow. But it is only like 0 degrees, 1 degrees. So have a fantastic day. Stay safe, everyone, and we will see you soon.
Take care.